Hello, I'm David Hunt, and let's talk about the arts. My guest today, she's a neighbour, lives around the corner. I never see her, but I see her a lot on social media, so we say hello every now and then on social media. She does a lot of management of comedians and musicians, and also major productions that she gets involved in. You might have heard of this little event called the Adelaide Fringe Festival, which is one of the biggest fringe festivals in the world. As a matter of fact, it's second, as everyone talks about. And she runs within the festival. It's called the Garden of Unearthly Delights. Michelle, hello and welcome.
Thank you, David. We are neighbours.
We are neighbours.
Very much a St Kilda pack, aren't we?
We are. And every now and then I see your husband, but I probably haven't seen him for about 4 or 5 years now, come to think about it.
Well, I think COVID's ruined all our habits, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Bumping into each other everywhere.
Yeah. I used to see him picking up the post office and
yes.
all that.
I've still got the same post office box.
Right.
Had it for about 50 years.
Right.
Oh no, it must be less than 50. I'm not that old.
I reckon 5 minutes at least. So where did all this interest come, like showbiz? You're very much behind the scenes of showbiz.
It is a funny thing because it's not, it wasn't my intention, but I've always been, if I think back, my nana took me to the Australian Ballet. She had season tickets every year. I went to the ballet with nana all the time.
Oh, lovely.
So we used to drive from, out of suburbia, past the Skipping Girl, sign and the old, what was the other big neon sign on that road? It was,
the Vinegar.
Coppertone with the dog pulling the towel.
Right. Copper.
All the way down to the Palais, because that's where the Australian Ballet used to be built. And I used to think St Kilda was just like somewhere out of this world. It was just the most amazing place where amazing things happen.
Well, it still is.
It still is. And so I think probably, my family have always been interested in watching performance. So I've always had an interest. Then it sort of grew into Australian music, back in our young days of pub rock and
Well,
that
how
sort of
did
thing.
you meet your husband, Andrew?
Well, I studied commerce and I was working like a real job in corporate Melbourne, doing all my postgraduate degrees in applied finance and the like. And I met Andrew, I think through Paul McDermott at the Doug Anthony All-Stars, because I had moved to St Kilda and sort of started making friends with people like Greg Fleet, and they started dragging me off to the big gig, which was recorded at the old ABC studios. So I met Paul somewhere along the track there, and Andrew was working with the Doug Anthony's management.
Okay.
So we technically knew each other at school, but, not
didn't
really.
Yeah. Right, okay. And so when did you then jump ship and become part of the circus?
I think I was about 23 and Andrew was working with the Doug Anthony All-Stars management and the Black Sorrows, and they were both enormously successful at the time. It was early 90s, massively successful. And I thought, this looks like fun. It seems quite a good way to make a living. Not. But it was I don't know, at the time I was young and I was just not feeling that the corporate Melbourne was my fit. Didn't feel right. It seemed too much about making money and not enough about other things. So I temporarily left.
But it was good, to have that understanding.
Oh yes, it's been very useful. I never underestimate the importance of learning as much as you possibly can about every single thing.
But you actually then just hinted that you went back. You left it and then went back.
I did go back for a minute and then I left again and started my own company, which was in something completely separate, but ultimately wove into, thanks to Joe Camilleri, into publicity in the arts and ultimately into business in the arts.
Right, okay. So it was music a lot, even though you were hanging around with the Doug Anthony All-Stars and whatever. But why the comedy stuff, which Melbourne's so famous for comedy?
I don't know, it sits nicely with me. I understand the people who work in comedy. I enjoy the social commentary. I particularly love political, satirical, thinking man's comedy, for want of a better expression. But that's my personal area of joy. I don't know. I think we all need a laugh quite a lot.
But also, Michelle, the fact is that Melbourne became the mecca. Well, it does in so much in the arts, but comedy in particular. And all of a sudden it just went like crazy, didn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why, except, Melbourne is the best. So beyond that, it could have been all sorts of things. Probably It could have been the sort of the evolution and investment that was put into Melbourne Comedy Festival to nurture new artists, to grow and build a sort of a real solid base here. Could have been having a great venue like The Last Laugh, a permanent running comedy venue. The Last Laugh used to be in Smith Street, Collingwood.
Yep.
It doesn't run anymore, but it was, just a permanent every night running venue. So everyone had regular work, so we were able to sort of upskill artists by making them work, giving them an opportunity to work every night.
Yep.
It was a great venue. Fully loved it. It could be, I think it could be things like having the ABC recording shows like The Big Gig in Melbourne, not in Sydney. So if you wanted to be in this new emerging market of comedy, you moved to Melbourne.
Yep.
So a lot, the Dougs didn't come from Melbourne; they come from Canberra. But people moved to Melbourne. So we I don't know. It could have been all of these things went into really centering comedy in Melbourne.
Could you feel it happening?
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
It wasn't something you just got swept along. You could feel it.
Yeah, and our joke was always that artists went from treating it like a hobby, like it was kind of like a hobby, and we were all quite naughty and ridiculous, and then it turned into a business. And so the next wave of comedians, they didn't drink, they didn't party like we used to. They're really taking it seriously, because it was actually, at some point in my life, it became not so much purely about having fun and pushing the boundaries. It became an actual way to earn a living and a proper job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you start managing comedians?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think about 2008 we set up Buxton Comedy Management. I did it with my business partner Chris McDonald, who'd come out of live comedy production, live touring.
Yep.
So that was after years of working with Andrew on the music management. I decided I needed my own course, and I really wanted to work in comedy.
Yeah.
I prefer it. I mean, I have a joke that it's easier to tour a comedian than a whole band with the instruments and all the baggage and all the setup and carry on. I just need a microphone, thanks, and we're off.
Yeah.
But
who was the first that you signed?
First comic? Probably Sammy J.
Sammy J. Oh,
yeah. I mean,
really?
there were four, the original first. Sammy, Felicity Ward, Heath Franklin, and David Quirk were our first four artists.
Okay.
And they're all still with us, and they're all coming along quite nicely.
Well, that alone, Michelle, is a credit to you.
Thank you.
But also the fact is that they'd be family now, wouldn't they?
Oh yes, without question. Yeah.
And how many comedians do you manage?
About 11.
11.
Yeah.
And what about new emerging?
I've got a number of new emerging young women comics at the moment, which I'm very excited about, because again, that's been a process that we've had to push through in my lifetime to get to find a place where women are appreciated in comedy, really to the same extent that men are. And I think we're really getting there now. So
I think so too.
Yeah. So Felicity, has been with us since the start, but more recently we've signed some young artists. Nina Oyama, who's doing incredibly well both as a writer and as a comic performer. So she's, starred in Deadlock, was very involved in the writing of Koala Man, which has been a very successful program on one of those big streaming networks. So she's an amazing talent. And then Nicolette Minster, they're all great. So Nicolette Minster, Urvi Majumdar, it's a young Indian heritage comic.
Okay.
Yes, she's gorgeous. So we're just working on a new ABC Fresh Blood project with her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jude Pearl.
Yeah.
She's a beautiful cabaret performer. Yeah, so there's a lot of excellent young women coming through now who are great, confident performers
how do you
and have
find
real
them?
Great writing skills.
How do you find them? Is it because you're in the biz and other people are telling you, or you might see them perform?
Yeah, it's a bit of all of those things. Sometimes we see people we like. The great thing about Chris and I is we could not be more different in every way, except we have almost identical senses of humour, which I can't explain. We're like 15 years different in age. He comes from Sydney. He's much younger than me. But it's just, if he finds someone funny, I could almost guarantee that I will too. It's such an unusual thing, which makes him very easy to partner in a business with.
Yeah.
Because we do really see the same things in artists.
Yeah.
Sometimes people recommend people to me, like, Randy, the purple puppet. He's a very good spotter of young talent, and he does tell us when he sees someone good, and I trust him, know. So it goes all the ways round.
Yeah, but what about when the comedy festival's on? Are you out and about looking, or
sometimes Chris does more of the looking during Comedy Festival because I'm usually pretty broken after Adelaide. I'm usually fairly tired when we get home to Melbourne. But yes, I certainly do go and see a lot of those, line-up shows where you can see a number of people in one sitting.
But yeah, like you look at fringe festivals and you look at comedy festivals. Yes, the cream at the top that do really well, but all the young up and comings, it's so ballsy that they get out there and do it, knowing that they're going to lose money. But it's their passion. It's what they want to do, and they've all got day jobs.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. They want to do it, and it's like songwriters. They can't stop the songs coming out of them. It's obviously something some people feel that they have to do.
Yeah,
which is great.
I'm going to ask you a bit of an odd question here. Here in St Kilda on a Friday night, there is a bottle shop which is also you can go there and have a drink as well on Fitzroy Street.
Yeah,
and they have a comedy night. Are you aware of that?
No.
And it's most.
That's where we'll meet up next. Shall
exactly. And because I'm on radio on Friday night, and when we're going off to have our dumplings later on, we get our takeaway wine from this place. And out the back.
Are you talking just past the post office?
No, it's
Further
going down towards the beach, and there's probably 50 to 100 people there some nights, and most of them are comedians, and they all get a little slot and they get up there. Sometimes we hang around and watch a film and you go, oh gosh, but that's the joy of it.
Fun.
Yeah, and how excited they are, and they're getting to know each other and whatever. So you must check it out. There's probably a lot of shockers as well. But
that's all right. We've all seen some shockers.
Right. So when did it happen that all of a sudden you went over to Adelaide, the Fringe Festival? It's the second biggest Fringe Festival in the world after Edinburgh, and it's now huge for a small town like Adelaide. I'll ask your opinion, because I've asked it with artists that we've had on here. Why does Adelaide, the Fringe Festival, work in Adelaide?
I think it's because the city is small. So I feel there's a lot of story going in here that's going to lead us to the garden, but I had done a number of years working in Edinburgh, particularly with David Bates for the famous Spiegel tent, and then with the Gilded Balloon. So I feel very similarly about Adelaide as I do about Edinburgh. The smaller city, the easier it is for the festival to consume you can feel it.
Yep.
You can feel it everywhere in Edinburgh and in Adelaide when the festivals are on.
Yeah.
And that is possible because the cities are smaller, and you can walk easily between, the garden and the festival centre where the Adelaide Festival is running, across the road to WOMAD on that weekend when WOMAD's in the park across the road from us. It's small, so the impact is high. It's very intense. And then Adelaide, the reason Adelaide, in my opinion, is even better than Edinburgh is the weather is just stunning. It's stunning. It's just beautiful, hot, balmy nights, and you're out in the street and there's buzzing everywhere and sparkling lights, and all your friends are there. It's the best.
and that's exactly the same reason. A small city that it works in.
It's something about the energy of it, and sort of once you've got the energy, more people get attracted. It's like moths to a flame. More people are attracted to it, and so then it builds.
And also the international festivals there are running pretty much at the same time. Starts a little bit later.
It's a bit shorter than the Fringe.
And which is supported by the government. So it's there, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's all there. So why did you go over?
Well, so I'll go back to Edinburgh. Because I'd been doing all that work, I'd come out of really starting my arts career in publicity for musicians and managing with Andrew, Colin Hay and Men at Work and Vicar and Linda and Stephen Cummings. I then sort of branched out into more general arts publicity and started working with David on the Spiegel tent in Edinburgh, and then got the job as the publicist for Adelaide Fringe. I moved to Adelaide to work for the Fringe before we started the garden. So that's how I know it so well.
Right. Let's just go back about the fabulous Spiegel tent.
Yes. And I like the way you call it fabulous. Famous.
Famous. I knew
But
it was
I'll
one
take
of those.
fabulous.
Yeah, fabulous.
Take that, David Bates.
So let's talk about David Bates, Melbourne lad.
Yeah. Canberra originally.
Originally Canberra. All right, you're going to pick me up on everything. No, I'm
No,
joking.
I'm not.
Tell that story, because that's the most beautiful story. How it's owned by an Australian.
Yeah. Well, it was when David was already running, managing the season of the Spiegelten in Edinburgh before I turned up, and it was originally, when I started working with him there, it was owned by someone else, and I can't really remember this because it was so long ago. You see, testing my memory. But I at some point he bought it, so he owned it, and we'd always talked about bringing it to Australia, and I think originally, from memory, the discussion was taking it to Canberra because David knows Canberra well. But then I got this job in Adelaide, and at the time Christy Anthony was the operations manager of the Spiegelten. I was the publicist, and we were all in Edinburgh together. She's from Adelaide. I then got a job in Adelaide, and suddenly Adelaide sort of popped into everyone's heads, and we all were standing there in Rundle Park going, this would be a nice spot for a Spiegelten. And somehow then it all happened. Andrew became involved as well, and we eventually shipped a Spiegelten out to Australia, and I spent 3.5 years telling everyone how to spell it.
Yes.
Now everybody knows what a Spiegelten is, but in those days, Australia's just going, you're bringing a what?
And for those who have never seen inside the Spiegelten, it's extraordinary, and there's a lot of back in the day, because there was the opera houses or theatres, but back when the Spiegeltents were built, that's where Marlene Dietrich performed and whatever. So it was more pop culture of the day.
Yeah. And the mobile venues, they're designed to tour. They're dance halls, mobile dance halls, and mobile, cabaret joints.
And there's no nails or anything. They all slot together.
You put in posts and big walls to slide in.
And when you're inside of it, it's just beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're old and beautiful and full of warmth and history. And they acoustically are very beautiful because of the round design with the soft roof, with the canvas roof. So the acoustics are beautiful. They're really fabulous venues to work in.
Yeah, they are. Fabulous. They are fabulous.
They are fabulous.
So all of a sudden, here it is. Is it standing alone in Adelaide when it first went over there?
Yes. And we had a 1 foot high picket fence to demarcate our area, and we had a licence capacity of I think 600. Yeah. And maybe because there was 330 in the Spiegelten, so we had a full house out, a full house in. That was our logic. So we had a 600 licence capacity. I don't even know what it is now. It's about 12 or 15,000 or something. So it's changed a lot. But it was very cute. And then I remember one guy turned up with a food caravan and said, do you mind if I just put my caravan here outside your Spiegel tent to service all the people that are coming? Because it was instantly a magnet. We always thought it would go well, but it was hugely financially expensive and risky for all of us at the time. And we were young and stupid and hoping for the best, basically, and people just flocked to it. It was hilarious. So then by the end of it, we had a food truck turn up and a coffee guy, and then so it sort of became its own thing, although we still didn't really understand what the thing was. And then we had a year off because the Adelaide Fringe used to be every 2 years in those days. So we had a year off to think about it and potted around and said, should we do it again? Well, we probably should. So we did it again, and then we heard this other guy was wanting to put a circus tent in the park across the road. So we rang him and said, that's ridiculous. We've already got a licence and toilets and blah, blah. You should move your tent over to our park and come next to us. And somewhere, the worst bit about this, I shouldn't really ever tell this story, but somehow there was a show in his tent the cloud swing was too high for the venue. So we had to build the cloud swing between the Spiegel tent and his big circus tent. Yeah. So his show started outside, in between. So the people queuing to go and see Vicar and Linda, for argument's sake, I can't remember who it would have been in those days, but at the Spiegel tent, had to watch the start of this big circus show in the next door tent because it was right above their heads. Yeah. And there was something about that, standing at the front gate and looking at all of that we suddenly realised the show starts at the gate, not inside the venues. And so that probably unleashed what has now taken 4 years to unravel into, or whatever you would say, come together into what it is now. But it's something about that. It was just, there was something about the joy of having all those people in one space. The food carts came back and so that bit expanded. The shows, the performance outside and inside, it was all. And so, you know, at our peak, we're still running slightly less venues than we were pre-COVID. But I think I think our biggest year we had 14 venues on the site.
Whoa.
Which, you know, makes for a lot of shows. And it's turned into massive food areas, restaurant areas. We've got a full sit-down restaurant. Hopefully we'll have another one.
Oh, is there?
Oh, yeah. And we've got the carnival rides. So it's just like it's a whole world of crazy in one little park.
Well, what do you think, Michelle, when you stand there at the front gate and you look in with the beautiful shot behind, the aerial shot that's behind me, and you must pinch yourself and go, whoa.
Yeah, it's the side hustle that got a little bit out of control, I think. No, it's beautiful. I'm still really, really proud of it, and I still find it incredibly exciting. You know, the first time you walk in on that opening night when you just go, have we got it all together? Yeah. It's still incredibly exhilarating and really fun.
But how much organisation must be behind it, Michelle? You know, as you said that you don't get really involved in the comedy festival here because you're so exhausted from Adelaide. But how many months does it take?
Well, I think we work on it all year round. Obviously, you know, while we're running the event, we're talking to the sponsors about the next event and, you know, hustling people into convincing them to bring their acts from overseas out to us. You know, so it is. Yes, it's totally year round. Yeah. It's particularly, you know, it's turned into quite a big part of Andrew and my workload. Andrew still manages the Black Sorrows, and I have my comedy management house, but this is still a big chunk of our work. Yeah.
So you're controlling each of the venues in, you know, like, or do you have particular people that run each venue?
Oh, well, the four of us, so we ended up going into a partnership with Scott Maidment and his team at Strut and Fret to produce the whole garden. So there are four of us that do the programming sort of jointly, in our bringing all our weird interests to bear on how it turns out. And we run all the bars, and we select all the restaurants that are going to be in there, and so it's very much the four of us. It's very much the four of us who make pretty much every decision about how it looks, how it's branded, who performs with us.
And who you know, like the City of Adelaide would be heavily involved because it's their park that you're in.
Yes, we rent the space from them.
But they would love it, and you know, the fact that you're there every year and they know you. And
it's certainly evolved the whole east end of Adelaide. It's completely changed. There's now another big event space across the road where Scott originally wanted to set up, going back to that earlier conversation.
Right.
And the whole East End is, you know, yes, it's definitely competition.
Oh, how do you feel about that?
Flattered, because it looks very similar to ours.
Oh, does it?
It's a great compliment. No, it's great. I think it's great. I do think, you know, old economic theorists would tell you that the more you put, as it comes back to the moth to the flame thing, the more you have, the more attraction the whole area gets. So it's been very good for the restaurants in the East End. It's great for us. It's great for Gluttony at the park across the road. Yeah, it works.
Yeah,
and it's great.
But now the festival, the Fringe Festival, used to be pretty much only in the city. It goes out to all the suburbs as well, doesn't it?
Yes, I believe it does. I don't get very far from East Terrace, I hate to say. I'm pretty much stuck exactly between my house and my venue, which are on the same street across the road from each other. Just run home to get changed, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, you would have to, wouldn't you?
The Fringe has turned into an amazing event, and I'm very proud to be associated with it and have been for a long time. I love it. It's truly the best festival in this country without any question. It's great. It's grown up well.
Yeah, but are there times though, Michelle, that you think, I'm getting too old for this, and you're like, can somebody else take it over? Like this morning.
Look, no, not yet. I think there will come a time when I don't want to do, I think all four of us will probably come to the point where we want to hand the reins to the more day-to-day nitty-gritty to other people. Yeah. And we've certainly been building a team over a long time now that it's got too big for us all to do it ourselves.
Of course it would be.
So we do have a great team of humans that help us put this together. It's not just us.
Yeah. And do you venture off into other states to do
No.
similar things?
No.
You just keep it
Yeah.
where it is. You know,
Yeah,
like you
I
don't.
think because we've all got very sort of productive businesses outside the garden. As I say, it was a side hustle. It was not ever meant to be. There was no intent. It was such an organic growth. We didn't see what was happening until we were really in the thick of it, and it became really quite a big event that everybody in the whole world knows. And it's sort of it was not a planned adventure.
Yeah.
But I don't think Scott does other touring of his Spiegel tent, and he produces massive shows all over the world. So he does all of the Stratton Fret productions, Limbo, Blanc de Blanc, all of these great shows that come out of his office. So. And Andrew's managing music and I'm managing comedy. So I don't think we really ever wanted to do the garden anywhere else. I mean, if someone came with a great opportunity, absolutely it'd be fun to do something new, it in a new place.
Yeah.
But it'd never be the same as the one that we made for Adelaide, because it was made for Adelaide. It's an Adelaide event.
Do you go to the other festivals around the world?
Quite often, yes. Yes. It depends on. I'm feeling more free to do that in later years, more recent years, because I had a lot of children at some point.
Right,
that held me back for a little while from travelling.
Oh, I saw a gorgeous photo of your son looking in the car window as his last day of school. Although probably it's going to get worse as his teenage life takes over.
Yeah, well. They're all great, but I usually do. Again, it seems weird because as soon as I got my children old enough to start travelling again, we had 2 years of COVID. So I just went, that's not right. That's not fair. I want to get back out there.
Yeah.
So yes, we try and everybody again. Scott and Sarah both travel. When related to other parts of their business, and I do the same, and so does Andrew. So we do see between us a lot of other festivals.
And as you pretty much was saying, is that with the four of you, you've pretty much got all your connections to. There we go.
We're a well-connected pack of four.
There's the front gate. Go and entertain everyone.
Yeah.
Is that pretty much what it's like?
Yeah.
That most of the performers?
Yes, we do. Yeah, I mean, particularly in the garden too, because it's become, like everyone who performs with us, it's sort of part of the family, and they do tend to come quite regularly to perform in the garden because they like it.
Yeah.
So the performers certainly we all know pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about the Fringe Festival as a whole? Because you guys dominate it, don't you?
Well, we're no longer technically the biggest. Gluttony across the road is bigger than us, as far as a footprint is concerned.
Oh, okay. Yep.
But we're certainly a very recognisable part of it, and I think that's just because we've been doing it for nearly a quarter of a century, David. How do you like the sound of that?
Makes you sound really old.
Really old.
and the fact is that you still love doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
Yeah. And every year has to be better than the last one.
Oh,
so
does
we still try really hard to think of new things that are good and exciting and that we haven't done before to make it to really, partly, Andrew Ware says it's probably just to entertain ourselves first and foremost, but whatever the reason, at least we're still interested, we still love it and we still want to make it better every year.
Yeah.
So
and that keeps it exciting.
Exactly.
I was going to ask, would there be something else out there in the world that you would like to try your hand at? That
there's always something else I want to try my hand at. Yeah.
Do you think you would one day?
But I still want to study architecture. I haven't even started that bit of my career yet. No, going back to so recently in the comedy world, I've had to start engaging in television production and learning how to do that, which so we made the 5 years of Sammy J for ABC, those little 3-minute political satires.
Yep.
And I remember that first meeting with the ABC and everyone talks in code and I'm just going... smiling as if I know exactly what's going on, just going. And then I had to ring someone at the ABC and go, could you just decipher for me all of these strings of letters? What do they actually mean? Yeah. So it's always good to learn new things, David.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
This is me in retirement. Here I am on the couch.
I love it.
I just admire, seeing you from afar through social media and never bumping into you as a neighbour. I just admire what you're doing and what you're achieving, and I just think to myself, gosh, and you've got kids as well.
I'm going to go and cook them some dinner now.
Do you?
Yeah.
Don't you make them cook you dinner?
I did try. I did try on Andrew today. We're too busy. Get takeaway, and he said no. So prefers a home cooked meal.
Well, what does he?
And he usually does the cooking, so I have to step up. It's my turn.
Okay.
You know, when you're feeling the pressure, I've got to keep these things even.
Well, thank you so much for finding the time today to chat with us. And I even had to change the time on you as well. And
luckily, I'm only around the corner.
Yeah. Well, because sometimes people are arriving here and they get here and they're flustered and they go, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm late. The traffic was horrendous." You know, you had no excuse. No
problem at all. No excuse needed.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your brilliant career. I really admire what you do.
Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. You've been watching me, David Hunt, talk to her, Michelle Buxton, who is a legend in this world, Australia. And we'll see you again next week talking about the arts. See ya.